จะถ่ายเลย
Hello everyone, welcome to the next session on SAP UI5. In the last class, we started the introduction of SAP UI5 SDK. We had also discussed about introduction of inheritance and association in object-oriented world. And now in today's session, we will go ahead and talk about how inheritance is realized in case of SAP UI5. The concept which is also known as control hierarchy. So let's get started. What is inheritance? First of all, just a quick repeat. So we saw in yesterday's example that we have an airplane class. And if there is a class which is having similar property to this airplane class, for example, the cargo plane or a passenger plane class, we create an inheritance of this cargo plane and passenger plane from the airplane class. This is the inheritance what we typically do. Okay. Now, how this is being realized in SAP UI5? So in SAP UI5 also, SAP have designed the whole of the UI5 framework and the libraries by creating inheritance. So if you typically look at any control, it's actually a class. So if you see sap.ui.commons.button, this is a control in SAP UI5. Yeah, this is actually treated like a control in SAP UI5. So this control is actually also a class, and this class inherits from another class. So if you look at the parent class of this is sap.ui.core library commons, it's control. This is the parent class for sap.ui.commons.button class. Okay, this is the inheritance hierarchy of SAP UI5, also known as control hierarchy in SAP UI5. Okay, control hierarchy. Now, why SAP did that is because, of course, the power of inheritance, which is reusability. Okay, now you would also see for this control class, there is another parent class called sap.ui.core.element class. This is the parent class of control class. And then further on, if you go on, you would see even element class has its own parent class called managed objects. Yeah. So this is the control hierarchy. Now, if you look at any class in SAP UI5, you would find that almost every class has its parent class as the control class. So if you look at SAP UI commons.text field, or for that matter, let's say there is a class called view, which we will discuss, SAP UI MVC.view. For this class also, the parent class is sap.ui.core.control class. This is the parent class for almost every control, every class available in SAP UI5 library. This is called control hierarchy. And the main purpose of this control hierarchy is to achieve reusability. Okay, so let's look at it in the system. So I will quickly go back to our API reference in SAP UI5 SDK, which we had discussed yesterday. This is the URL for SAP UI5 SDK. I'll just also place it over here. So let me just place it maybe here itself, SAP UI5 SDK URL. Yeah. And now I'll just quickly look at the button class. So you see, just go to the button class and you see, come down to button of SAP UI Commons library. There's a button class over here. I click on the class and now system shows me the documentation of this. So you can see here, control sample is not applicable. Module is SAP UI Commons button. Available since it's not applicable. Application component not applicable. Implements, these two classes are the child classes of the button class. Now, let me quickly give you some funda foxes here. In JavaScript, if we want to reference the parent class or something called inheritance, we use a special keyword called extends. Okay, extends keyword. Okay, so when you see extend keyword, it means it's an inheritance. Okay, now if you come back here, you see extends what? SAP UI core control. So this button class is actually an extension of this. It's an inheritance from the control class. So if you come back here, you see this is the SAP UI core control class and this is your button class. There is a parent-child relationship between them. Clear to all of you? So now another funda, folks, very important, very important funda, folks. If you are checking properties, methods, events, or aggregation of a control and unable to find the desired one, check in its parent class. Okay, check in the parent class, guys. Now let me take an example. If you go back to our practical which we did in 2 days back session, we saw here there is a place at method, right? Isn't it? We saw a place at method for button control. Oh, Spiderman dot place at. Now let's quickly check if this place at method is available inside the button class. So if I come to methods of my button class, do you see a method place at here? Let me go to P. It's already sorted. G, S, P, Q, R. So R comes after P. So G is before P. So after G there is directly R. There is no place at method here in the list of methods, right? Right? So what will you do if you are unable to find a method, a property, or an event, or an aggregation for that matter in a class? What will you do? What will you do if you are unable to find a property, event, method, or aggregation in a class? What will you do? Anybody? What will you do if you are unable to find something in it? Anybody? Yes, you will go and check it in the parent class. That's what I'm mentioning. If you are checking properties, events, aggregation, method, control, unable to find the desired one, check it in its parent class. How do you navigate to parent class? Which is the parent class of my control button class? Anybody? What is the parent class of my button class? How do you know? Yes, extends, and this is the parent class. Just click on this. It will take you to the parent class. You will see the class is now control class. And let's look at the methods. So I go to methods and now I'll just search for place P. So let me just scroll down and there you go. You see there is a method called place at. So now you know, guys, where this method is coming from, right? Where this method is coming from. So this method puts the control is specified in the DOM, in the basically in the container in your DOM. It will place your element. Now, can anybody tell me the class name, which is the parent class for my control class? What is the class name, which is parent class for my control class? Anybody? Which is the parent class? No, it's not SAP UI core. Absolutely, it's SAP UI core element, in which SAP UI core is the library name and element is the class name. This is the parent class for my control class. So you see, I have noted down here. This is called control hierarchy. It's very, very important to understand control hierarchy if you really want to become a good developer. Also, another aspect, if you find any time any problem with the component, let's say using a button control and that is behaving weird, You're not satisfied with the control behavior. It's behaving weird. So you got to open a ticket to SAP. You have to tell SAP that it's not as per the expectation. So this is the component you will be using to report a ticket to SAP about the problem you are facing in the control. Okay, is that clear to all of you? This is the button, this is the component you will be using. So now let us go ahead and discuss about creating a new application using MVC architecture. So this control hierarchy is very important. Now I'll also quickly show you, let's say for a different control called least control. So if I come to the least control, now if I see here aggregations of my least control, there is one aggregation called columns which is also deprecated. I don't see more aggregations, right? I see only one aggregation. Such a very important control, least control, it has only one aggregation. What shall I do to see its respective aggregations? Anybody? What shall I do? I don't find more aggregations as part of the control definition inside SDK. What shall I do? Go to its parent class. So click here list base class, which is the parent class. The beauty is all the properties, events, methods, and aggregations are automatically inherited to the child class, right? That's the concept of inheritance. Hence, whatever you see in the parent class, you can still reuse it in your child class. That's one of the most important point here to note. So now I go to aggregations, and you see there are a lot of different properties, a lot of different aggregations I can use from, and they all are inherited to the child class, which is a least class already. So I can use, when I'm creating object of a least class, I can also use these aggregations because they are part of parent class, which is least base class for the least class. Hope this is clear to all of you. Now, sometime you will also see aggregation like this, 0 to 1 and SAP UI core control. Which, what does this mean? This mean in the swipe content, you can put any control, because you see aggregation is with the super class of SAP UI5. This is the super class for all the controls. So you all know in object oriented world, we can assign child class object to parent class easily. So if there is a class, let's say these two are the child classes of plane class. If I create object of airplane class, I can assign object of any of these two classes to the parent class object. It's possible. This concept is called as narrowing cast. Assigning the child class object to the parent class is called as narrowing cast concept in object oriented world. So this is possible. A parent class object can contain object of any of the child class. So if you see an aggregation with this class, which means in swipe content aggregation, I can assign any control of UI5. I can put a button, I can put a text field, I can put a switch, I can put a table. Whatever control inherits from this control class can be part of this. This is what I've done. Okay. This is the concept of association with the control class. Now here in this header toolbar, I can't assign any control. My control has to be of type toolbar because it's clearly mentioned here. But here when you see a control class is aggregating, any control can be sent inside this aggregation. We will see practical examples of all this in our upcoming chapters. But hope you all understood at least the association concept. Why does the association required? The inheritance concept, and also the control hierarchy in SAP UI5. And these two funda foxes, of course, very important for you to remember throughout the life so that you can become a good developer in UI5. Let's get started now with our MVC architecture. What is MVC architecture? So what has happened when software industry started? Everybody, there are different companies like IBM, Apple, SAP, these are all the world leaders in software industry. They all have started developing different softwares. These companies have, every company had their own style of developing software. But what was common in all of them was problem statement. For example, how do you create object? How will you call methods? How will you reuse? So these were the common problems with every company faced, right? Whenever you are in any project, there are some problems which you face always common problems, right? So when object-oriented principles were applied, every company started developing with their own style. But more or less all of their problems were same. So what did they do? They came together, all the architects have come together and discussed on these common problems and derived the common solutions of these problems. Okay, they have derived common solutions of these common problems. What these common solutions were? These common solutions together were named as design pattern. So design patterns are basically divided into three broad categories: creational, behavioral, and there is one more which I missed it right now. I don't remember. So these are all the three different variety of design patterns which these people have derived together. Creational, which clearly deals with creation of an object. Behavioral, and there is one more. I don't know that. I forgot that name. So these are all the three common design patterns which these people have discussed. Okay. Functional. Okay, good answer. So third is functional. So together, these common problems in the software world were solved with these three different variety of patterns. Now, in creational, it always deals with creation of object like factory, abstract factory, singleton. Some of you might have heard about these names. Some of you might not. So if you're not, don't worry. Behavioral more deals about the behavior of an object. How can you really make the object behave, like passing signal from one object to another, like decorator, event, listener. All these are behavioral. Then comes the functional, which works overall with the functionality of the software. Functionality as in, like, how can I create object in such a way that is more reusable. So that is called functional, like template, facade to hide the complexity. Then you have abstract design pattern. You have design pattern like proxy. All these are different functional design pattern which deals purely with the functionality of the software. So one of the common problem which all of these software vendors was also having is user interface. Whenever you have a UI and application logic and data, everybody has this common problem. A lot of companies have their screens, they have processing logic and the data. What do we solve? What do we do if in case we have all three things in our project? What shall we do? Which design pattern do we apply? They have come up with a design pattern called MVC Design Pattern, which is known as model, view, and controller. So there are a lot of design patterns, out of which this particular design pattern is the champion, or is the contender which you have to choose whenever you have a user interface in your application. Okay, MVC design pattern is what you will be using. Model, view, controller architecture, or MVC design pattern. So MVC is actually a design pattern not specific to SAP but specific to industry. If any one of you have done Android development using Android SDK, or you've done iPhone development using iPhone SDK, or you would have done any other there is a very popular technology by Google called there is a very popular technology by Google. It's actually a JavaScript based technology. Can anybody name that technology? What is that? It's a very popular JavaScript technology by Google, which gives you also responsive web design. Anybody have worked with that? I also missed the name. So that JavaScript technology also uses MVC design pattern. Okay, so there are these different applications or different technologies. They all use same design pattern. Okay, so even SAP UI5 uses same design pattern. So because in SAP UI5 also we have a screen, we have a model, we have data. So we also use MVC design pattern in this case. So what is MVC design pattern? MVC design pattern is applied in cases where we have a screen, where we have data, and where we have processing. So that is where MVC design pattern is applied. So let me quickly note down here. In MVC architecture, you have a controller, you have a user interface which is known as view, and you have the data which is controlled by model. And if you look at these three things, they are actually objects. Technically speaking, they are objects. Controller is an object, view is an object, view model is an object. Now if you have learned engineering, during engineering we had a lot of subjects like applied electronics, digital electronics, analog communication, digital communication, antenna engineering, rocket science. We have missile technology, we have applied physics. So we have a lot of different subjects. What is the main outcome of all the subject is input, output, data, and processing. Any machine in this world you see, any engine you see, the main functionality all revolves around any machine, any computer object: input, output, data, and processing. The MVC pattern follows the same thing: input, output, data, and processing. That's what MVC architecture is all about, where view is your input output. This is your IO, which is nothing but your screens. In layman term, if you say, it's a screen, it's a UI with which user interacts. So user will never see these two. User will only see the view. That's his user perspective. Then comes the controller. Controller is your processing. And then comes your model. Model is your data. And all three are actually the objects. All three are objects. Now, whenever, let's say, you want to calculate something, user enter 2 plus 2 from the screen. This calculation ideally should be done in the controller. So any calculation logic you are writing, write always in the controller. So whenever there is a data change and user click on a button, the view notifies controller about the action. So whenever there is activity done by user, this is actually an action. In the controller, you will be having an action handler. And action handler processes your request sent by the view. After processing the request, it sends the output. It sends the signal to the view. So it notifies the view that this is what has been changed and this is what has been updated, or the result is sent back to the view. View then displays this result to the user. So that's about between view and controller. Now, in case you want to store the data, if you want to process some data, you want to do calculation on the data, all the data is kept in the model. So it is also possible that in case if there is a change in the data, the controller notifies the model that there is a change in the data. Okay, it notifies there is a change in the data, and once the data is changed and updated, the response is sent back to the controller that data is being changed or data is been updated. So updates are then sent back to the controller, or controller access the updated data from the model. So ultimately all three technically are objects in our case. Now sometimes you don't need a processing of the data. Okay, you just want to display the data which you have in your model directly in the view. Okay, sometimes You don't want to do processing of the data. You directly want to consume or display the data to the user. So let's say here is your user. You want to display the data to the user, which is there in the model. Okay. What will you do? Do you want to go by controller? Do you want to go by controller? Anyone? In case if you just want to display the data without any processing, do you want to go via controller to the model? Is this the path you will take? What would be the ideal path you will take? Which is the shorter path? Is this path is shorter? Yes, directly view to the model. Is the path A is short or is the path B is short? Which path is short? Anybody? A or B? Which one you will choose? B, of course. You want to directly go and talk to model between the view and model. That's what exactly we also do. This is called data binding. So data binding is the concept where you can directly talk to the model object also. Very important concept. This is called data binding, where your screen can connect to the data model directly. Is this clear to all of you? The MVC architecture, model view controller architecture. It's all about input output data and processing. In some cases, you don't want to process the data. You directly connect your data, your view with the model. Okay, that's called data binding concept. Now let's quickly look at in context of SAP UI5, in which technique you will be coding it. So when it comes to controller, which is the programming language that browser understand? Which is the programming language which browser understand? JavaScript, absolutely. That's the only way you will code your controller, because it's the processing logic, your imperative logic with if condition, else condition, switch case statement, looping, all your control, your processing will be done using JavaScript. Then comes to your view. You can use multiple variety of views. So how can you build a user interface? You can use HTML directly to display your screen. You can use JSON also to build the screen. You can use XML views. You can also use JavaScript views. So you see here, these are all the different types of views we have in SAP UI5. You can use any of these views in order to create your screen, in order to design your screen or the view to the user. Now, 90% of the project uses XML views, and 10% of the project uses JavaScript views. I have not seen any project till date using HTML or JSON views at all. Okay. Now, when it comes to dynamic coding, okay, when it comes to creating view dynamically, we use 100% JavaScript. This is one challenge why, even though you directly don't use JavaScript view, still you need to know JavaScript code to create something. Okay. So it's my experience. I've also seen standard FIORI apps where they dynamically build the view, like dynamic ALV. If you guys have worked with dialog programming, you dynamically build an ALV using coding. So in that case, JavaScript is the only option. So that's why in our course, we will focus on JavaScript views in detail, but we will also look at XML views in our final end-to-end POC, which we will build. Okay, so XML views we will also cover. We will also cover JavaScript views, but major focus will be JavaScript views in this current course. Okay, XML view also you will understand, and I will also touch upon little bit on HTML and JSON views also. Okay, but not go in detail. We will extensively get into detail of JavaScript views and XML views in the current course. Okay, now comes finally your models. So your data can be in multiple different variety of formats. So there are different data models. One is called XML data model, then you have JSON, then you have resource model, and then you have OData model, which is the most popular model used in SAP UI5. So first three models are the client side models, and then this one is actually the server side model. which means all the data resides on the server side. In this case, all the data will be residing in the client side, which means it will be loaded in the browser. That's the only difference right now I can make. I will discuss about model in detail in our unit number 7, where we will talk about in detail how to create each type of model. We'll extensively see all the type of models and their practical usage. Okay, so hope you all understood MVC architecture and the techniques to build any of the different variety of content. So which are all the different options to build views, which are all the different options to build model, and then of course controller is always a processing which is in the JavaScript. So let's go ahead and convert our example which we did the other day in form of a simple script, just writing everything inside a single index HTML. Now we will switch to the concept of MVC architecture and build our screen. So let's get started with that. So now I'll go ahead and create my first MVC based UI5 project. So I close these windows. First of all, it's a good practice that you don't open too many windows in Eclipse. Otherwise, sometimes, you misplace your code somewhere else, or you change some controllers or some views of a different project, okay, which would lead to problems. So it's always a good practice to work with less number of windows open. That's all my personal experience with which I'm telling. It may be applied to you. You may be liking working with too many windows parallel, but my personal experience is we cannot then focus much or better onto our code, and we do mistakes when there are too many windows open. So now what I'm going to do is create a new project. So I say new project, application project under SAP UI5, and choose your project name, my MVC project, SAP UI Commons for time being, and this time I will leave this checked. Last time you remember I unchecked this while creating the view. Now I leave this checked, and now here I choose the view name as main view, and I'm choosing, see, all 4 type of views here. You can choose whichever you like. I'm choosing the view as main view. Okay, I'm using it as a main view. So main view, say finish. You will see in a bit what it creates. It will create a view, it will create a controller, it will also create a index.html file, because ultimately browser, you need to submit something to the browser which browser can display you. That's your index.html file. Let's have a quick look at the index.html file first. So what is the difference you will now see in the index.html? So as usual, you have a index.html file which is header and body. In the body you will again see just a one div element with content and this SAP UI5 body, which is the body tag. And now if you can expand header, and you see the meta tag over here, and once again you have your bootstrap loading the SAP UI5 framework. What needs to be loaded is SAP UI Commons library. Theme should be blue crystal, and there you see a ready-made code inside the script and script tag. What is the meaning of each line of code? Let's look at the first line of code, SAP UI local resource. What is this line doing? So when you see this line, sap.ui.local resource, what does it mean? It means when you start your project, this script will be executed. Okay, this script will be executed when you're starting your project. So the statement will tell the browser that which folder all my resources for project are placed. So these resources are actually the JavaScript, or I would say the view and controller code. This is what this line is doing. It will tell the browser that which is the folder under which all my JavaScript files XML files, basically your view and controller folder are placed. Okay, this is what it will tell the browser. So one very important funda, folks, if you place, okay, if you place any of your view and controller somewhere else outside this folder, will that be loaded by browser or not? Will browser load that or not? If you place this view and controller outside the current folder which it is denoting, so if you see here what it is saying, it's saying all my resources are placed under this folder which is here. So if you place these four files, any of the file outside this folder somewhere under web content, will your project work or not? Yes or no? I just want yes or no. It will not work. Simple. Because browser, we are telling the browser load the resources from this folder. If you place these files outside the folder, you will get error. Browser will say could not locate controller, could not locate view, because browser don't know. Browser always look for resources under this folder which you are telling. Okay, clear to everyone? I hope it is clear to everyone. What does this statement means? You are telling browser load all my views and controller are placed in this folder. This is what you told the browser. That is what the first statement is. So it means never ever put any JavaScript file, view or controller outside this folder. Okay, but does that mean you can never do that? You can. I will show you in upcoming chapters. This is a pretty advanced stage of learning. When you reach to that level, that time I'll show you how to do it. But right now, understand clearly that putting something outside this folder will not work. Next thing, statement is this one. Here what it is doing, it's creating the object of a view. You remember everything is an object. So view is also an object. What is a view actually? View is a container which contains other elements. View is a container which contain other UI elements. Like if you are creating a complex screen which has buttons, which has input fields, tab strip, table, you are going to place all of them inside a view. And view is what you will put inside the DOM. So what is that it is doing? It's creating an object of a brand new view. And then finally it's saying place at. Now, can anybody tell me, is this place at method available at the view class level, or is it coming from control class? Just now I showed you some time back in the control hierarchy. Is this placed at method available in the view class, or is this coming from control class? Satya has got it right. Ishwaran also got it right. Parul right. Absolutely. All of you are right. It's coming from the parent class. Okay, which is the control class, parent class it's coming from. So now it's placing. Now if I can also show you this in the UI5 SDK, come here and check view, which is part of SAP UI core library. So let's come down, SAP UI core MVC, and you see these are different type of view, and there is this view class. So I click on the view class, you see SAP UI core MVC view class, and now you see parent class for this class is SAP UI core control class. See the parent class, and we saw that there was a method called place at in that. So now you know how actually behind the scenes it's working, how the things are coming from the system, how the framework is designed. This is very important for each one of us to know how the framework is designed. This is how the framework is designed. And if you understand framework, you can do anything. You can build the framework also. Okay, so that is what is happening behind the scenes. So now this is just placing the button, the view, whole view in the body of HTML. So now let me quickly note down here. Step 1, tell the browser the path of the folder where all the project resources like controller and view are placed. Statement number 2, instantiate the view object which internally contain all the other UI elements. Third is step 3, place the view in the DOM. Place the whole view into the DOM. That's your step 3. So these are all the 3 steps which you are following in order to achieve MVC in the index. So this code gets executed. You don't have to change anything in this code. It will now place your view in the body of HTML. Now, what is there inside the view? So we created the view object. Now, one more question which some of you can ask, Anubhav, it's not following syntax. The syntax which we learned was var, object name, new keyword. No problem. Put your new keyword here. No problem. Who's stopping you? And then ID of the view. So you can put ID main1 here. This is ID of the view. Curly braces or properties. So again, an ID property can be given here for the view, or it can be given directly as the beginning. So both will work, same result. So I can remove this ID property, and then view name is the full path of the view where the view is placed. So the folder name dot the view name. You can see the view here. It's a JavaScript type of view. How do I know it's a JavaScript view? Can anybody tell me how do you know that this view is a JavaScript view? It's not an XML view. How do you know? Yes, it has .js as its extension. Absolutely right. That's how you know that it's a JavaScript view, because .js is the extension. Okay. If it is .xml, it's an XML view. If it is .json, it's a JSON. If it is .html, it's an HTML view. Controller is always .js, always. Now here you also see the type of the view. Now you see this one. This is tricky. I don't know what is this. Let's understand what is this. So in abap also we have concept of interface constants. It's actually the same concept like in abap. So what is an interface constant? So first of all, let me quickly show you creating something. So let's say I have a package. Inside a package I have a class. Okay, inside the package I have a class. Let me just, this is a class, and inside this class I have a structure constant. Let's say the name of the structure constant is name of this structure constant is view type, and inside this structure constant I have 4 constant values: JS, XML, JSON, and HTML. These are all 4 constant values inside this structure. Okay, this is the setup which I have in the system. Now if I want to refer to XML, what is the path I will take from outside? I'm an outsider. So if I want to refer to XML, how will I go to XML? How will you go to somebody's address? First you identify the country. After reaching to the country, you will go to the city. After going to the city, you will go to the sector or the address or the area, basically using area pin code. Then you go to the street, and then from the street you will go to the house number, and then from house number, probably you, or apartment number, you will go to the floor, and then you go to the flat number, right? This is how you reach somebody. Similarly, if you want to reach this guy XML, how will you go? You will go by package dot class name dot constant name dot its value, right? So what will you write in order to reach over there? You will be writing basically the package name. So it's package dot class dot view type. Remember, it's JavaScript, so it's case sensitive. View type dot XML. This is how you'll reach. Now if I quickly go and change these things, package as equals to SAP UI MVC is the package name. Sorry, SAP UI core is the package name or the library name. And if I just put the class name as the core class, what will this become? Anybody? What will you write now? You will say package equals to what? SAP UI core. What is the class name? Sorry, class name is MVC. What is the class name? Anybody? What is the class name? After reaching to the package, which class I am referring inside this package? MVC. MVC dot. What is the constant name? What is the name of the constant under which all four properties are placed? What is the name of that constant? No, it's not XML. It's part of view type constant. So you have to first put view type, and then XML is the constant name. Remember, JavaScript is case sensitive. Again, I'm repeating this. I also repeated in the last classes. JavaScript is case sensitive. So view type dot XML. Now it's just exactly same thing what is done here. It is referring a constant available in the system, which is of type JavaScript view. That's the constant it is referring. System is referring here. So it's creating an object of a view. So it needs the name of the view, where the view is placed, what is the name, and the type of the view. So these two properties we are passing to create the object of the view. And this is the ID of the view which will be assigned, and finally placing the view in the DOM. Okay. Is these three statements clear to all of you? We spent around 15 to 20 minutes on just these three statements. I hope it's clear to all of you. These three statements, very important. Okay, now moving on to the view. What is that a view contains inside? So view and controller both are siblings, both are brother and sisters. So how do they work? What is a view? View is just a container. Okay, just a container for UI elements. Like you will put all your button, your input field, everything inside the view. It's just a container of your UI elements. That's what your view is. Okay, it's just a container for UI elements. That's what your view is. Now inside the view, if you look at, there are three sections, mainly two sections indeed. The first section and the second section. The first section is called get controller name. This is the first method which comes inside the view automatically. Second method is create content. This is the second method of a view which comes ready-made to you. These two are methods which are part of a view which comes ready-made when you create a new view. Okay. Now there is also a controller next besides the view, which is typically named as same name as the view name. Okay. Typically named as the same name as the view name. The controller is named as the same name as the view name. So you have a controller also with the view. Now, if you look at here, this is the view main view.js and main controller.js. You see the names are same, but you see .view.js is the extension for the view. .controller.js is the extension for the controller. Now, when you run the project, if you're running the project, who runs this project? When we are running the project, behind the scenes is the programming language C program runs this project, or SQL runs this project, or abap runs this project? Who runs this project? Who runs the view? Who runs the controller? Who understand all these things? What you're creating is the UI5 framework. Perfect answer. UI5 framework is what understand what is there and what to run, because it's a UI5 project. It's not a Java project. It's not a C project. It's a UI5 project. So UI5 framework runs this project. Correct? So you have your UI5 framework who runs this project. This guy runs the project. It's a UI5 project. So this framework has to run the project. Now, when it runs the project, what it does behind the scene, it creates the object of your view, and it creates the object of your controller. It creates the object of both of these things inside to work with it. Everything is an object. So the UI5 framework creates object of your view and controller inside itself. Okay, that's what it does. And how it knows that it has to create object of view, you have written it in index HTML. You see, you are telling UI5 framework, create an object of the view, right? Right? You are telling here, this statement is telling UI5 framework, create the object of the view is here. Go ahead and create its object. Yeah, you shoot it. You are telling the address of the person to whom you have to shoot. So this is statement you are giving to UI5 framework and telling itself to go ahead and shoot this guy. Yeah. What it does, it goes and creates an object of the view. First of all, the view object is getting created, but it has to create controller object. How does this UI5 framework know that this is the controller? How does it know, guys? You didn't tell about controller to this guy, right? You did not tell the UI5 framework about who is the controller of this view, right? You did not tell that. You only tell the address of the view, right? So what it happens is, when SAP UI5 framework creates the object of your view, it also calls this method called get controller name inside the view. In this method, what we do is we return controller name. So when SAP UI5 framework creates the object of your view, there is a method it calls called get controller name, which then returns back the name of the controller to the UI5 framework. This is the return. And with this return, SAP UI5 framework now knows the controller path. Who's the controller? So then it creates the object of the controller. Everything is an object. Then it creates the object of the controller. Understood this part? Anybody? Any doubt on this? Or how, I hope all of you have understood how the UI5 framework knows about which controller object needs to be created. The view will tell that in the method called get controller name, which is a ready-made method provided by the view to the UI5 framework, which UI5 framework will call and get to know the address of the controller. So basically you're trying to trace a smuggler. So you catch one of the smugglers guy and you're asking him, tell me the name of the smuggler, main smuggler. So this is the name it tells you, and now you reaches the address. Now you are going and catching this main smuggler. Yeah. So this is what you're doing. UI5 framework first asks the view, who is your controller? I'm creating your object. Tell me your controller. It tells its controller name. Then it goes and creates the controller object. Okay. This is what UI5 framework is doing behind the scenes. So this method is of no use for us, but it is useful by framework. That's why this method is placed in the view. Okay. Now when it is creating the object of the controller is also a class actually. So anybody, which method of a class gets called automatically when you create object of the class? Anybody from object oriented world, which method of the class gets called automatically? Perfect answer. Everybody have got it. It's the constructor. Constructor is the method of a class which gets called automatic when you create object of the class. Okay. So there is a constructor in the controller called onInit. This method is existing in the controller, which gets called automatically when UI5 framework creates the object of the controller. Hope this is also clear. What is an onInit method of a controller? Okay. Which method of a class gets called when the class object is destroyed? When the class object is destroyed, which method of the class gets called? Similar to constructor, there is also one more method. Perfect, Jayanta. It's called destructor. Similarly, we have an onExit method in controller, which gets called when UI5 framework dispose the object of controller. So these two methods also you will see in your controller available all the time. So once your view object and controller object are created, then SAP UI5 framework will, in the next call, it makes a call to create content method of your view. It calls the create content method of your view in the next call. Once this is done, in the create content method, it passes the object of controller to the view. Okay, so it has already created the object of the controller. Now this object it will pass to the view in create content method. That's why you will see the create content function. When you will see it, it has an import parameter called oController. So create content method of the view will receive a ready-made object of its controller. Okay, it will receive the object of the controller as a parameter from UI5 framework. UI5 framework, after creating both the objects, calls the create content method of the view, and it passes the object of the controller, to this view. Is this clear what's happening behind the scenes? So it will pass the object of the controller here. Here it will pass. You will receive it. So this is your handler. So if at all in here you want to call a method, okay, if you want to call a method of a controller from here, let's say you have a button and you want to code something for button in the controller, so you can code now your processing logic always in controller. This is possible. So you will say press, or you will say click me. This is a function you have coded now. So you can actually call that function, because just to call a function you need an object, right? You need an object to call a function, and this object UI5 framework is giving you as a parameter in create content method. So if you want to call that function click me, you can use oController dot click me, and you can call that function which is there in your controller. So this is what is happening behind the scenes, why these different methods are there and why they are involved and where they are involved in the picture. Hope this is clear, the flow is clear to all of you, what is happening behind the scenes. Now if you look at the view and controller, you will easily understand what's put inside. So if I go quickly to the view code, you can see here it's the definition of the view here. It's defining the JavaScript view, putting the path of the view, comma, curly braces, get controller name method, which is just returning the name of the controller with its path. And second method is create content, which is right now empty, and it's receiving an object parameter as an import called oController. If you look at the controller code, you will see there is a controller definition, and then you see on init function, and there is on exit function. There are two more functions. We will discuss about these functions in detail later, but right now you see there is on init, which is like a constructor of the class, on exit, which is like a destructor of the class within your controller. Hope this is clear to all of you. What is the code inside the generated view and controller is there by default. Is this clear to all of you? Anybody, any doubt, feel free to ask the question. These are also known as hook methods. Just for understanding, this on init, on before rendering, on after rendering, and on exit, four methods collectively known as hook methods in SAP UI5. Similar concept to WebDin Pro. In WebDin Pro, we have view controller also. In view, we have four hook methods, actually six hook methods: on init, on exit, on before action, on after action, do modify view, and I think there are five methods in the view controller in WebDin Pro. And at the controller level, component controller level, we have do before processing, do after processing, basically post processing, pre-processing methods, do init, do exit, and I think there are some more methods in the controller, component controller of a WebDin Pro. So those who know WebDin Pro program, you can relate also this with the hook method concept in WebDin Pro as well. Hope this is clear to all of you. Any questions? Any questions about this? So no questions. That's the end of today's class. Hope I made some sense to all of you today, understanding what's going on behind the scenes, how the framework is designed, how the constants are designed, what is the meaning of every line. That's more important, guys. Meaning of every line. Anybody can develop Fiori app, but you need to know the meaning of every line. And that's why I always say never ever learn from trainers who are doing copy paste, because they themselves don't know concepts. They don't know what is going on behind the scenes. They don't know how the framework is working, interacting with your entities. Never learn from trainers who are doing copy paste, because they are just cheating. They are just cheating. They have ready-made examples. They will copy paste the examples. They just care about output. They just care about output. You should not be like them. You should learn meaning of every line, what is every line is doing, why it is like this, why there is a method called get controller name, what it does, what is the role it plays in the overall picture. That is the behind the scenes, what is going on in UI5. Okay, there's a question, what's the actual practice with MVC or without MVC? Of course, with MVC. You have to build things with MVC. Okay, you have to build things with MVC. Okay, Jayanta is saying that you should mark all the steps with 1 to 3. Okay, let me do that, Jayanta, quickly. Okay, please don't put questions or your discussions in the private window. Please put it publicly so everybody can see it. So this is step number 1, where it calls instantiate the view object and calls the get controller name to get the controller name of the corresponding view. It gets the controller name, and then step 3, it creates the object of the controller. And then after creating the object of the controller, it receives the object of the controller. It also calls the onInit method of your controller. And then once the object of the controller is created, in step number 5, it will go ahead and pass this object of the controller and calls the get create content method of your view, so that it can pass this object of the controller which it has created to the view itself. That is what is happening in the flow between the UI5 framework and your entities which you created. Everything is an object. UI5 framework is working with these artifacts as an object. It's treating them as an object for you. Okay. Very good question from Manish. Is it possible to have multiple controllers? As of now, we see framework generated a controller. Yes, indeed, you will do that. You will create multiple views and multiple controllers. Adjacent to that, there is also one more question which we will try to answer in the next class. What if this is also indeed a very good interview question? I typically ask this question in my interviews which I take for candidates. So can we have a single controller for multiple views? Is this possible to have single controller for multiple views? This is first question. Once they answer yes, I will say, if yes, is vice versa possible? Now the tricky part is, with this question I also test the ability of candidate to understand my question. Can candidate understand my question? This is one parameter I judge in interview with candidates. So if you understand my psychology as an interviewer, you can quickly understand the psychology of an interviewer. Then with that, in sync with that, if you work, you can easily crack an interview. Okay, so with this question I did not put him directly the question. I put him is vice versa possible, which means with this question I'm testing two things. First is his knowledge, second is his ability to understand the question. What does the vice versa means? Here my first question was, can we have single controller for multiple view? What is the vice versa? Vice versa is, can we have single view for multiple controller? Right, this is my question, but I did not ask this question directly. I asked, is vice versa possible? So then I will actually also test with this question, that does he understand my question properly? Can he react to the questions asked when he is working in my project? Does he understand requirement clearly when he is working in a project? With this I am testing two things. Yeah, so this is the psychology of an interviewer. This is how interviewer will ask you questions. So if you can understand, then if he ask me, can you please explain more, sir? I did not understand what is vice versa here. What do you mean by this? Then with this, he has failed in one of the parameter, the ability to understand the questions. This parameter I will give him 0, because he did not understood my question. If he answer, then I will put this question up front, clear question. If he answer this, then I will give him 1 point to answer this question properly with the topic point. So this is his knowledge part, that yes, he understand concepts. So this is how interview goes. Okay, understand the psychology of an interview. Believe me, I have rejected candidates with UI5 certification. I have rejected many of them, and I have selected, I preferred candidate who can work in my project, who can answer my question, who has ability to understand my question. Those people I have selected over people those who have done UI5 certification, because we all know, even interviewer knows how somebody can crack a certification with 80, 90, 95% of marks. I have all the profile of the candidate front of me. I can see clearly his engineering percentage are 65 and he has scored SAP UI5 certification 98 percentile. That doesn't match. What do you think? Is he a rocket scientist or what? How this has happened? Is this possible? If you see a guy scoring throughout the engineering consistently 60%, suddenly next year he appear for SAP UI5 certification exam and score 98%. Do you think he's having superpowers? Is that possible? Funny, isn't it? Interviewer knows about it, guys. Interviewer knows about it. So don't try to make fool of people. They will get to know immediately. Your knowledge will help you. A piece of certificate will not help you. A piece of certificate will help you to get more calls. Initial calls for interviews, initial calls, it will help you. It will not help you in your project. It will not help you in your career. I have seen companies laying off people who are certified in abap, but keeping the resources who are doing good, who are working and delivering results in abap. Certification is not the parameter. Just for the information, I am also not certified in SAP UI5, but I can challenge any certified person. Come and sit at front of me. Let's have an interview and test the knowledge. That's what matters for me. So never ask me certification. Okay, never ask me. I'm not against it, but it's just that I am not a fan of certification. Knowledge is what matters. Certification doesn't matter for me. I, in fact, if a person is certified, I I increase the level of interview. I ask him more advanced questions in UI5 because he's certified. I expect more from him than a person who is not certified. Hope this is clear to all of you. The understanding of a certified candidate and non-certified candidate. Yes, certification helps just to get you initial calls, especially also if you are in government project. Okay, in government projects like federal government projects or UK government projects, sometimes they prefer candidates with certification over candidates who don't have certification. Also, if you have a candidate with same knowledge as you are, your certification is a plus point for you, but not will help you. I have a lot of people taking job support from us who are certified. They somehow got into company with their help of their certification, but they are ultimately coming here to take job support and support from us. What is that certification is of use? No use. Just read some dumps books and get the certification cracked. Won't help you. Won't help you. Knowledge will help you. So in next class, we will answer this question and understand how does that work, and I will prove that yes, it is possible, and how that is possible in the system, we will see that in detail. With that, it's a wrap on today's class. See you tomorrow at the same time. Have a nice day and goodbye.